Hey there, and welcome to Lunar Lunch Break. This is Evelyn Rose. Today is, of course, Memorial Day here in the US. For those outside of the US or who don't actually know what Memorial Day is celebrated for, which is understandable given the overemphasis on cookouts and things of that nature, this is a day when we really take the time to honor our service members who have died in the line of service. Or many of us veterans also celebrate those we've lost, maybe not necessarily during deployments, but as a result of their services, whether that was overseas or here at home. Um, and so it tends to be more of a little bit more solemn of a celebration, which again is part of why there are things like cookouts and things like that. It was about celebrating those loved ones, not just mourning and grieving. So honoring in every sense of that word. So it's understandable why some people might not know what it's for, but as a veteran, this tends to be a bit more of a day of remembrance. And so if no one shows up, if nobody has any questions in the chat or anything, I may end up ending this session a little bit earlier than usual. As always, I do have my questions lined up that haven't been answered in previous sessions sent to me through email or through social media. Um, but again, otherwise, I'll probably keep it short just because I know today is a day when many of us are celebrating or honoring or grieving, even, especially with a lot of the things going on right now. We are losing our service members. So I did want to stay consistent though, and I do want to continue doing these weekly live streams. But again, I might keep it short. Um, let's see. So over this weekend, the last couple days, I had the pleasure to um be I guess, participant in the our sorcery hour. Um, this was a really awesome event over the weekend involving many different practitioners who don't always get to have their voices platformed as highly as I believe they should be. So lots of valuable insights, even as somebody who has decades of experience, knowledge, training, and all that good stuff. There were still differences in perspectives that was really extremely valuable. Um, and it was definitely heartening to see a more well-rounded approach to some of the subjects that I watch people on social media get like absolutely bonkers, like picking sides kind of thing. So it was really wonderful to see like a more balanced approach, as I would expect from any real spiritual leaders. So it was fantastic. If you didn't get to experience it, I believe they do it every year. I suspect in May. It was May this year, but it was just called Our Sorcery Hour. So definitely, if you are interested in esoteric practices at all, and you want to get to hear some valuable information from various leaders, again, who tend to come from more minorities within our esoteric and spiritual paths, um, who don't always get to have a larger platform, that is the opportunity to do so. It is done completely virtually online. And then they end it with a meet and greet session on the final night. And it tends to be a lot more intimate that way, opportunities to meet with the presenters, the host, everything. So it was fantastic getting to have an opportunity to chat and meet with everybody. Um, so again, if you've never heard of it, if you've never had the opportunity, definitely keep an eye out for that one. I'll try to make sure to drop some links in the show notes so that you can find it. Maybe sign up for some uh, notices for when they do next year's. But again, that was just this weekend, so you missed out on it for this year. But there will be more opportunities in the future. Let's see. Any other big take? I don't think there's a whole lot more to talk about. There is only one more week. I've been shouting out at the end of the last couple live streams about my friend Matanda. She's Tandercia on Twitch. She has a couple of different YouTube accounts. I think I just linked the one, but she does have more than one. Definitely, she's only got like a week left for her fundraiser. I haven't checked in to see where she's at, but I know she was about roughly halfway to her goal for funding the trip to Japan, where she will get to have full immersion, not just in the language, but also in the culture. Um, and be able to come back to us and share that with us. So absolutely want to see. She's definitely a future spiritual leader within our community. So I definitely want to see her be successful, so she can bring this back and share what she learned for the benefit of all of us. Um, let's see. So there's a week left on that. Other things coming up, is it this weekend? This coming weekend? It is this coming weekend is my first appearances at the Little Treasure Shop here in Newark. So starting this Saturday, May 30th of 2026, this will be the first of every other weekend appearances at the Little Treasure Shop in Newark. Again, if you've never been, absolutely stop by. If you're not in the Delaware area, if you're ever passing through, it's this cute little shop. It's the owners, basically, it's almost like a art gallery of sorts, if you will, um, where like so there is a bit of a gallery. So there is actual artwork there created by the artists. There's different artisans, crafters, vintage resellers. Um, there's so much there, and so basically, the artists and crafters rent out the space within the Little Treasure Shop, and that's how the owners get their money to operate. So any purchase that you make, 100% of that goes to the artist and to the crafters. So this is like a little gem that keeps our local artists and crafters and tiny small businesses alive and functioning in our area. So I'm bringing my tarot readings there at near event prices. Um, and then if you actually buy anything there at the store at in the store toward any of these artists and any of the crafts, and there's so much there. I struggle to go in there and not buy something every time I'm in there. It's like through a sheer force of will and determination that I can step out of there without buying something. If you know how often I'm in there, you would understand why that's such a feat. Um, and so if you buy anything at all, I'll take $10 off of your reading that day, um, which basically puts it at my event pricing. So it's an opportunity to enjoy um, slightly less chaotic event readings. Um, at this time, we're looking at indoors, although if weather's really nice, we may pop the tent out outside and enjoy some nice outside weather to do those readings. But for the most part, I'll be indoors for these. Um, there's a couple, I think there's one weekend in June and one weekend in July where they're having their holiday, like a celebration type thing. So in June, there's going to be the Summerween. I thought it was called Juneween and Summerween, um, Halloween and summer. And then in July, it's like mid-July, I believe. I think that's my only weekend scheduled for July because between the shop schedule and my own, that's the only weekend that worked out. Um, and that one's gonna be a Christmas in July, so that'll be fun. So little mini mini holiday weekends in over the summer, and I'll be there doing my tarot readings. And for those events, at least some of those days might be outside in the tent, but for the most part, they'll be set up in that little corner indoors where I was for the rebrand bash. Um, and again, it's a great opportunity to get to experience my style of tarot or just tarot in general if you've never had the pleasure of getting a professional reading done there in shop. So you don't have to you don't have to panic like, do I really want this crazy lady to come into my home? I'm like, I'm not that kind of a crazy lady, but I'll accept the label of crazy. Um, it's hard to be sane in an insane world like this. So I will gladly accept that designation if that's if you want to call me that. Um, let's see. So those are the big things is just the of course today being Memorial Day, um, the Matanda's fundraiser. You only have 1 week left. That's an opportunity to experience a different style of divination reading. So not just tarot, but she also does pendulum. Um, and she is doing those, I believe, virtually. But she'll also create PDFs and stuff. If you go to her coffee page, which I'll have the link in the show notes, and I've had it in the link in the show notes for the last couple weeks, she details like exactly what she's offering. So there's only a week left to take advantage of those specials for this fundraiser. Let's try to get her to 100% because again, while she's on that trip, I want to make sure that she is taken care of and that she is not struggling at any point because I want her 100% focused on the immersion experience. So let's help her out in that goal. And then again, I'll be at the little treasure shop starting this weekend. Let's see. Any other big news? Nope, that covers the big three for this week. Um, I'm going to go ahead and get us into the questions. Of course, if you at any point have a question, anything related to tarot, spiritual practices, magic, witchcraft, all that stuff, just drop your questions in the chat. I tend to be pretty straightforward if I'm giving like an oversimplified answer or if it's something that I can't answer on the spot, then I definitely make sure to get you some resources for later. But for the most part, any questions in those topic areas, I'm more than happy to address, even if it's only lightly. If there's plenty of time, I will do my usual ADHD squirrel brain tangent style of answering your question. I do try to answer questions from multiple angles. Um, and just drop those questions in the chat at any time. The questions that I am going to start out with while I'm waiting for anything to pop up in the chat are just questions that have been asked to me in advance. If you ever want to ask me questions in advance, especially if you want to keep it anonymous, because I don't name names unless you ask me to, you could just send me an email. You could send me a direct message through any socials that you find me on. Pretty much reach out to me however and just let me know that hey, here's this question, can you answer it? Just don't say it's me. And I'll probably also try to answer the question. If you send me an email, I'll probably try to answer it right then and there, but I'll also add it to my list to answer in the live streams. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's see. Okay, so one question here. Oh, let me do this so I make sure I mark that I'm answering it. All right, so what's the line between a binding spell and a hex? Is one worse? So typically when we talk about hexes, it's kind of like cursing, right? Like it's I'm going to make the bad things happen. Whereas binding is very more specific to kind of stopping one's movements, preventing them um, from seeing out their intentions, if you will. So depending on what the purpose of the hex or the curse is, one might be worse than the other. Binding, when done successfully, like fully, it's almost like immobilizing, not necessarily physically. Um, but if you want to think of that as like an analogy, it would be the idea is like, okay, if I bind them, then they're not going to be able to cause harm. They're not going to be able to have as much influence on other people. They aren't going to be able to um, push forward and achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. Um, and a lot of times when we do bindings, typically speaking, this is more of a protective measure. The idea is that this thing that the target is wanting to do would be so harmful to you or to the community or um, just in general that you want to bind them to stop them from causing that harm or even to themselves, right? Um, But again, not necessarily everybody follows the same ethics. But ethically speaking, that is the purpose of a binding. Um, Whereas with a hex or a curse, sometimes this can be more intentional with various things that could involve binding, stopping um, those actions. It could involve trying to essentially increase the bad luck. right? Or just take away the good luck. It can be to cause harm in some way. Um, so hexing is, again, it really depends on one's personal ethics. I am of the mindset of the old saying, like, "A witch you cannot hex cannot heal." It's the same basic principles at work. That said, just because you can doesn't mean you should. That goes for any action. There's many, many things that every single one of us are physically capable of doing, but we know that we shouldn't for whatever reason, or feel that we shouldn't, or would be like horrified with ourselves if we did. Uh, and so, kind of that same thing. What is your personal worldview? I know there are people out there who are ready to throw hexes and curses at every little thing, and that just to me is that's about as bad as anybody that you would want to bind. So, um, but that's my personal take on it. I do tend to appreciate the more. Again, I've said it before. I tend to be more of a Wiccan flavored witch. So um the classic Wiccan read and basic rule of thumb of don't um and at harm none, do as you will kind of idea. Um, I hear some people modify that these days to like do no harm but take no shit. Um, and that's that same basic principle at work. It's is it really worth it to work up that level of energy? So when you're actually talking real effective, esoteric, real magic, um, yeah, it involves a lot of work. There's a lot of prep work that goes on. There's a lot of energy raising that goes on. A lot of having to know exactly what it is that you're doing and what you want it to do, and manipulating those energies. And that's a ton of work. And sometimes, honestly, it's just not worth it. There are other ways to go about it that it takes significantly less work. This is why we usually say if there's a mundane way to do a thing, then just do it the mundane way. You don't need to do a spell for every little thing that you want. Um, and this is part of why we say that because the amount of effort that goes into real magic is more than the effort to just get up off your couch and do the thing, instead of just trying to will it to happen. It's kind of like if you've ever seen people trying to like, sit there and I what was the best movie of it was like with the Mallrats when he's sitting there trying to like Silent Bob's trying to sit there and do the Jedi mind trick, right? And trying to will the remote to him. And like you can sit there and try to will that remote from across the room and exert a lot of time and energy and effort into trying to manifest that form of, you know, s- psychokinesis, or you can just get up and go grab the remote. You know, to me, in that instance, it just makes more sense to get up and go grab the remote. And same thing with the hexing and the cursing. I see people who left and right, like whether or not they actually do it, will just be very quick to jump to like that is the thing to do. So in terms of like is one worse? I would say anytime, whether it's a binding spell or some other form of hex or curse, if it takes more effort to do all that than it would be to cause the same effect without it, I would say that would be worse. Um, but again, I'm not here to judge, I'm not here to criticize. Um, but to that question, that's what I would consider worse is whatever is just you're doing too much. Is that really necessary? If it's not necessary and you're doing it anyway, that would be the worst choice. Um, but again, I am not going to be the judge and jury on that. I can there are plenty of judgmental people out there. Let them have that one. Let's see. Hopefully that answered your question. If not, as always, you know how to reach out to me. Um, and I'm happy to kind of go over it a little bit more with you. If you want me to break down um, like various different kinds of hexes and curses, just let me know. For the sake of this Q&A session, I'm not going to do all that, but you can always reach out to me and we can one-on-one it. All right, so let's see. Oh, another Really good magic one. Okay, do spells need to be done once, or can you keep feeding them over time? So, yes. Yes to both. So, there are spells where ideally they can be a one and done. Um, and then there are other forms of spells that do involve feeding them over time. And then even those one and done, you can set them up to repeat them if you wanted to. Um, both are possibilities, different styles, different approaches. Depending on what exactly it is that you're working on, you might want to feed them over and over again. Um, some online discussions that I've seen recently involve like the idea of money jars. And I absolutely, I had learned something different, very different from what they were sharing within the discussions. Um, but it was kind of that same basic principle of like you do this money magic spell that involved like a tangible thing, and then you just over time would add to it. Like the way I had learned it back in my earlier days was creating essentially um hold on, my dog is barking, give me one. All right, sorry about that. All right, so the back to the money box idea. So the idea was having like a dish or a box or something of that nature, that was part of this money magic spell, and you would include some form of dollar bill with it. Um, and then over time, like any time that you came into money, you put another dollar bill added to it. Not necessarily all the money that you got, but just like a bill from that money that you got. And you would just kind of keep feeding it in that kind of a way over time. And in this recent discussion, they were talking about money jars, and it sounds like something different that doesn't actually involve necessarily physical money being added, but there was still that component of you feed it over time and you keep increasing it to kind of keep the money flowing, if you will. So that's one example of a way that a spell could be fed over time. Um, other ways might be like in the case of candle magic, you might have a big elaborate ritual and spell involved in a particular work toward your goal. And then for a certain number of days afterwards, you continue to just light a candle, um, kind of reinforcing your intention. So you kind of feed it in that way instead of repeating the spell again and again to that same level of depth. You just kind of keep that energy going. It's almost like kind of keeping a ritual fire lit over time, only modern day version where you don't have fire tenders, and you can't keep your candles burning unattended because that's how houses burn down. Um, so that's another way to kind of feed a spell over time. Um, but again, not all spells necessarily need that. If it's something where I'm going to do this, I'm going to put the energy out there, and then that's it. That's all there is to it. It really just depends on the specific intentions. Like I do like with the idea of particularly any sort of wealth, prosperity, or even health, something that needs a consistent going. So, for example, if there's a particular illness, you might have a one and done spell. But if you are doing a health that is meant to just kind of keep things preventative or um, like ongoing health for your family, um, that would be something where you might have a spell that you just kind of feed over time to keep that healthy um, and well-being energy flowing. Okay. Hopefully that helped to answer that question. Again, I love it when you guys ask me questions where the answer is simply a yes or no, even though it was like an either or question. Um, but the answer to both parts of that question is just simply yes. You can have a one and done spell, and you can also keep feeding your spells over time. And it's going to look different in different kinds of ways depending on the nature of the spell, your approach, your style. Um, there's so much out there, there's so much variety. But if you have any specifics that you want me to kind of touch on, just let me know. All right, let's see. Oh, okay. This question. actually kind of matches with the first one I was answering. So, how do you follow harm none but also do a banishing spell on someone? So, as I mentioned, many of us, whether we identify as Wiccan or not, um, because Wicca's not the only tradition that has like a harm none principle involved. We just tend to be the most, well known example because we would explicitly go around shouting harm none for the longest time. Um, but that was not that concept, that teaching was not born within Wicca. It came from many different areas that just kind of converged within Wicca, and that's where most people know it from. So many paths today do still have that same kind of guideline of, ideally, the emphasis is on more of like a live let live type thing. Like, unless somebody's harming you, there's no need to be, out going out of your way to cause harm. That's just stupid and a waste of energy. And I don't know why anybody finds that entertaining, but I also don't understand why people like a lot of many things that they find entertaining. So again, not here to judge. But on that point, if you, assuming, are following that same kind of mindset of, I want to live my life causing as little harm as possible, like that's the goal. Um, I'd rather be here to make the world better than to make it worse, right? So if you need, you're asking like, so, but also how to do a banishing spell on somebody. So ideally, with a banishing, for those who aren't aware, banishing is like, get this person away from me. I don't want them here. I need them gone. Them being here is harmful, either toward me or toward somebody that I love, or toward the community as a whole. We just want to get them out of here. So, with banishing spells, the goal is to essentially make them not want to be around you. And so, if you're trying to balance that idea of harm, though, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where some of us, the modern spin take on what I learned. So the modern day spin is the harm none but take no shit. I learned, like, harm none unless it's to prevent a greater harm, right? So the idea is, if the banishing is to stop or prevent a greater harm, then not doing the banishing would be an even bigger harm. If you are capable of banishing this person, then you should absolutely be using your energy to banish that person. Now, if you're just trying to banish them because you want them to just leave you alone because they annoy you, that's a whole other issue. And now you're kind of getting into, is that really preventing a greater harm? And so I tend to think of, when it comes to matters of banishings and things like that, kind of the same from a mundane example. So think of like, think if you go to a shop all the time and you're in there all the time, and this dude just keeps coming in, and every time he is just harassing you and the other people, and eventually you just get fed up. Like, you're not even the shop owner, and you're just like, you need to get the f out of here, you need to leave and never come back, you are not welcome here, go away. And now this makes them shut their mouth, and they walk out the door, and they never come back, and you may or may not get some cheers from the other people in the shop, right? So, is that essentially a banishing? Yeah, you just essentially verbally banish this person. Was it a spell? No, you just set the boundary of like, get out of here, you're not welcome. Um, in that case, you've just protected that space. You have elevated the other people around you. Um, and you've essentially put a stop to the harassment, right? So, in that case, you are essentially preventing a greater harm, which would be the ongoing harassment, the potential for people to stop frequenting that shop, and to essentially the shop's failure. And then now nobody has access to that within their community. So it would actually damage the community to allow those abuses to continue to happen. So, same thing with a banishing spell. If you are having this situation where you need to get this person to leave because they are, them staying around and continuing to do what they are doing is going to continue to cause this harm, you are preventing that greater harm by banishing them. That said, if we want to back it up, this is where, actual magical practitioners really have to think out their work and their intentions. what is the situation with this person? Is this person maybe coming in and maybe this person just lacks certain social skills? Maybe this person is actually dealing with mental health or social struggles, and this is essentially their cry for help. Is telling them to get the F out and never come back actually causing them the greater harm? Or was it the community that needed to kind of rally around to try to help and support this person? Um, in which case, telling them to get the F out and never come back is actually quite awful and terrible, right? So, kind of that same idea with the magic. Is this person that you're wanting to do this banishing spell on, is this somebody who actually just needs help in some way? Is banishing the answer? Or would a better way, a better use of your magical spells be to target for that person to receive whatever it is that they need? Do you know what it is that they need? Do you know if their behavior is associated with a need or if they're just a jerk? Okay, so this is where you really have to do your homework to figure out and balance, is am I doing a greater harm by doing or not doing this vanishing spell? And then of course the other flip side of it, going back to what I was saying earlier, do you even need to cast the spell in the first place, or is there a mundane action like just verbalizing your boundaries of like, hey, I don't like it when you talk to me this way. This is not okay. Um, or is this, another way to verbalize it, depending on the situation, is like, "Hey, is there something going on? This isn't how you normally are. Can I help you, or do you need some help from somebody?" So sometimes the mundane is the better approach. And then again, starting with the mundane also allows you to get the data you need to find out and determine, is this somebody that I need to tell to get the F out, or is this somebody that I need to, refer to special support services? Okay, so it's another way to gather data before you cast that spell work in the first place. Because again, if you are doing real and effective magic, there is energy work involved. Um, Hopefully that helped kind of really break it down for you. But yes, you can absolutely be following that guideline of harming none as long as you are doing your prep work. All of this, I mentioned it briefly before. This goes back to that witch's pyramid. Like that to know piece is your foundation of the whole pyramid. If you don't know all the things, like it's better to just not do it at all. Um, and that's not to say that you can't not know all. There's always going to be unknown unknowns. Um, but taking that time, the point to harm none is really to take that time to assess, to work out what do I need to know before I begin this magical working. Okay. All right. Hopefully that helped. Again, reach out to me if I was unclear in any way. If you need me to go a little bit more in depth, just let me know. Um. Okay. I've got a couple other questions that kind of relate to. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do these two more questions, and then unless anything comes up in the chat, we'll just end on these, because I can answer these quickly since they line up with what we've just been talking about. Um, so one of the questions was, is it okay to charge money for a curse if people ask for it? Um, Again, I'm not here to judge, so what you decide to do is on your conscience. That said, just because people are asking for a curse does not mean that that is the correct answer. Again, this is, as magical practitioners, this is one of our, from a societal perspective, this is kind of one of our responsibilities, is being able to discern between, is it necessary or is it not? Just because people are asking for it, even if they're offering your money for it, does not mean that it is the right thing to do. It doesn't mean that it is required of you. It doesn't mean that it's expected of you. It just simply means that somebody had a thing and they wanted it now and they were willing to pay money to make it happen. People do that to try to get people murdered. So you can see how this can get really complex really quick. So keep that in mind if you're trying to balance out like, ooh, they really want me to do it. Am I supposed to do it? The answer is no. Just like, no, you're not supposed to murder somebody just because somebody wants to pay you to do it. Okay. Um, many stories, cautionary tales out there against that. So same thing with a curse. Just because somebody's asking you for it and willing to pay you for it doesn't mean that you should be charging money for it or that you should be doing it at all. So it's interesting to me because your question is mainly seems to be focused more on, is it okay to charge money? My thing is like, is the curse even worth it? Um, so let's pretend that they're not coming to you for a curse. Let's say that their goal is one of healing instead. And so is it okay to charge money? Yes. Spiritual leaders, spiritual healers, spiritual practitioners, um, fortune tellers, anybody within spiritual dynamics have always been paid for their services in some way. Today, that's through money. That is our form of currency. Before, it used to be the community would help out in some way, whether that was providing, um, I think I've given the example before of like, providing, a chicken or something, whether that's a live chicken or a chicken not live anymore. So there's many different ways to exchange money or exchange energy for those spiritual services. Uh, but in terms of charging money, that is the system. Now, if you have somebody coming to you and they're like, I do not have the money for this, are you willing to barter? Then that's your choice, whether you would like to charge money or whether you are open to bartering. That is a you decision. But in terms of ethically, can you charge for spiritual services? 100% yes. But again, specifically on a curse, the basic fundamentals come back to like, should you even be doing the curse in the first place, regardless of whether money is involved? That that is to me, the more important piece of this question. But if I swap out curse with a different type of spell, then yeah, there's no reason that you can't charge money. I just wouldn't necessarily be charging money for curses because I wouldn't be, advertising curses as a solution to things because there usually is a better solution than jumping straight to curses. And if you're charging money for curses, then that's basically asking people to ask for it. So just basic human psychology. So charging money for spiritual services, yes. People asking you for curses doesn't automatically mean that that is a service that you should necessarily be quick to provide. All right. Hopefully that fully addressed the question. All right. And then the other question that I want to go ahead and knock out here is, how do I know if some witchcraft info I find online is legit or fake? Well, first of all, if it's trying to teach you how to throw fireballs, that would be fake. So this is one of those really tricky questions. So this is going to be the short, simple answer, and we can always circle back around to this question another time, and I'll take more time with it. In a nutshell, any witchcraft information that is clearly approached as an esoteric practice. So I think I have a moment of empowerment video on the topic. I have the blog entry, and I've talked about it before in previous live streams. Anything that's esoteric is something that it's difficult to learn. It's difficult to understand. It is literally what the term means. So witchcraft is an esoteric practice. So that means this is not something that you learn overnight. It's not something that you just pick up a book or you take a 101 course and you got it mastered. This is years of development. So if the online information that you're looking at is basically giving you a big pat on the back because you spent an hour watching a video or reading an article and they're like, and now you are a witch, then that is not, it's not necessarily that it's illegitimate. Like, it can still be legit depending on how they are defining witch. I know nowadays people want to use witch to just basically mean something entirely different. But if it's meant to be witchcraft in terms of magical practice, then yes, it's what you're looking for is an actual deep esoteric practice. That is something that's going to take time to learn. That said, like, again, the biggest clue if it's fake is if it's trying to teach you how to throw fireballs or, you know, literally transmute things, you know, kind of like, oh, like Full Metal Alchemist style. Like, if it's like that, then you can count on it being fake. That said, there's a lot of witchcraft info out there that is totally legitimate. If you ever need like specific resources, you can always reach out. My Messages in the Moonlight website usually has links, although I have not checked that in a while, so some of those links may be broken. So I'll definitely have to go back in and check on that for you guys. But hopefully that helped to answer that. And then again, you can always reach out if you need more information. Again, that's a super short overview of an answer. So I know that's not, it would take a full session just to do this question justice. Um, all right. So those are the questions that I have lined up for today. Um, if you're just now coming into the chat, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and drop them into the chat and I can address those before we wrap up. Um, I usually go until at least 2 p.m. Um, so if you're on the Eastern side of things, there is time to answer more questions of anything dealing with witchcraft, tarot, spiritual practice in general. Happy to go over those with you. Some of it I go over quickly, others of it I get a little ADHD squirrel brain and kind of go on a few different tangents, but I eventually get around to answering the question more directly. Um, Otherwise, it being Memorial Day, I do intend to kind of wrap it up a little early today. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and do my usual end of session updates. But if you do drop a question in the chat, I'm happy to answer it before I do the final out. Um, but I will pull up my update screen in the meantime. Um, so as always, any links I will have in the show notes. I'll try to also provide some links from what I mentioned earlier. If I don't get those into the notes today, then I will definitely do that when I go to add the timestamps tomorrow. Obviously, the biggest thing is to stay up to date. Make sure to subscribe to my newsletter. It's called the Starlight Circle. I only send it once a month. The most recent just came out like a week ago, so it'll be a couple weeks or so before you see another one. If you enroll in the Tarot 101, that is a completely free mini course specifically for designed for seekers and skeptics alike, just to kind of break down all those misconceptions about tarot and how it really gets used today. Um, when you enroll in that, that does automatically subscribe you to the newsletter, so it's a good way to kind of do both things at once. You can always, again, my that Messages in the Moonlight that I was just talking about has a lot of resources. A lot of the questions today, I know many of the pages on that site um, include that kind of information. I also just this weekend added new navigation to the Messages in the Moonlight so that you can follow the pages, like just kind of click next page and kind of go through it almost like it's a book. Not exactly how it was designed to be navigated, but if you hate having to go through navigational menus and trying to keep track of where you were, um, it's just a way to kind of help make it a little easier for those who like to have, you know, forward and back buttons on websites. So hopefully that'll help you explore the different resources there. There's tons of stuff there, including recommended resources on other topics. Um, of course, you can follow me on social media. So Blue Sky is where I tend to be most active. I know I've been a little quiet in recent weeks, just trying to kind of take a little bit of mental health break from the beast that is social media. But I am still there. I still do take a look at any DMs if you send me a direct message. Obviously, if you're here, then you already know that I have Twitch and YouTube. As always, with the live streams, the best way to get your question answered on the air is just to drop your questions in the chat. Uh, if you would rather stay anonymized with your questions, submit them ahead of time via email, social, or if you see me around town, if you're in the Delaware area, just feel free to ask me a question and say, hey, can you add this to your list? And I'm more than happy to answer it on an upcoming live stream. Speaking of, the next one is going to, of course, be Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Um, between then and now, you'll see me at the little treasure shop, so definitely come check me out there. Uh, as always, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my channel. That way you know when I go live. You can also like and comment on this video. That's going to help ensure that you and others are able to find more videos just like this. And as always, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to wrap this up because it is Memorial Day and I want to get back to doing my usual things that I do in celebration and honoring those that I've and others have lost, who have lost. Oh my goodness, I swear I know my words. Um, so please take a moment, whether that's through a moment of silence or, pouring out some libations, whatever it is that you do, um, just to honor those service members. And whether you're in the US or elsewhere, any service members who have served your communities that you have lost, take this time to honor them. And as always, please remember, keep radiating hope into the world. And I will see you next time.